Humanity came closer to extinction than almost anyone realizes. Imagine if every person alive today descended from one small town. Not one country, not one continent, one town. Some scientists believe that is almost exactly what happened around 900,000 years ago. The genetic evidence points towards something most people have never heard of. A population bottleneck so severe that the entire human lineage may have been reduced to somewhere between 1,000 and 1,300 breeding individuals. Not confirmed, not certain. But if the evidence is correct, every single person alive today descends from that tiny group. So what almost wiped us out? The world turned against us. Around 900,000 years ago, the Earth entered one of its most unstable climatic periods. Temperatures swung dramatically. Ice ages extended further than before. Rainfall patterns collapsed across entire regions. Forests that had supported human populations for hundreds of thousands of years simply vanished. The trees disappeared. The animals that lived in them disappeared. The rivers shrank. Water sources that entire communities had relied on for generations dried up and did not return. Early humans were not farmers. They could not store food for years in advance. They could not irrigate dried land or dig wells. When the environment that sustained them collapsed, they had nowhere to turn. They walked further looking for food, found less, walked further still. And slowly, generation by generation, the numbers fell. It was not just the environment. Every trip for food was a gamble. Cave lions patrolled the same territories humans needed to cross to find water. Hyenas competed directly for the same carcasses. Giant crocodiles made rivers extremely dangerous. Ancient leopards stalked the same forest edges where humans searched for food. This was not a world where predator encounters were rare. This was a world where predators were everywhere, constantly, and a single moment of bad luck meant you did not come home. Early humans in this period were not yet the coordinated hunters they would later become. Smaller groups, cruder tools, an environment that was actively collapsing around them. The pressure was coming from every direction simultaneously. Climate, drought, predators, scarcity, and it lasted not for years, not for decades, for generations. Imagine being born into a tribe of 50 people. When you are 5 years old, there are 43. By the time you are old enough to hunt, there are 31. Every year, someone disappears. Sometimes a child never wakes up after a harsh winter. Sometimes a hunter leaves at sunrise and never returns. Sometimes an entire neighboring group simply vanishes and nobody knows why. At first, people remember their names. Years later, there is nobody left alive who even remembers they existed. This was not one disaster. It was thousands of small disasters spread across generations. 10,000 became 5,000. 5,000 became 1,000. Communities that had existed for centuries simply stopped existing. The genetic evidence suggests this continued for an extraordinarily long time. Not decades. Possibly over 100,000 years of sustained population decline before the survivors began to recover. That is not a disaster. That is the edge of oblivion. Imagine waking up every morning knowing your entire world consisted of fewer than 50 people. There was no guarantee you would ever meet another tribe again. Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months. Sometimes the only human voices you heard belonged to the same handful of people you had known your entire life. Every decision mattered. Do you risk crossing a river to search for food? Do you leave the safety of your fire to hunt? Do you follow animal tracks into unfamiliar territory? One mistake did not only cost your life, it could cost the future of your entire group. If 3 hunters never returned, there might not be enough adults left to protect the children. If one season produced almost no food, there were no neighboring cities to trade with. No farms, no stored grain, no rescue, only the people standing beside you. And every year the margin for survival grew thinner. So why did anyone survive at all? Because of the same things that would later make humans the most dangerous species on Earth. Fire. Even in the worst conditions, fire provided warmth, protection, and a way to process food that made calories more accessible. Tools. Crude, but effective. A sharpened stone meant the difference between accessing the inside of a carcass and starving beside it. And knowledge. One group learned where water remained during the driest seasons. Another discovered which plants stayed edible after long droughts. Someone figured out a better way to shape stone into sharper blades. None of those discoveries disappeared when one person died. They were passed to children, then to grandchildren. Knowledge began to outlive the people who created it. Small groups found each other, shared what they knew, kept each other alive through seasons that should have killed everyone. The humans who survived were not the strongest or the fastest. They were the ones who refused to stop sharing what they knew. That simple idea changed everything. Those tiny discoveries accumulated over thousands of generations. Better tools, better hunting, better cooperation. Eventually, those small improvements made farming, cities, and civilizations possible. The world you know today exists because they made it through one more winter, one more drought, one more hunt, one more generation. Every language ever spoken, every empire ever built, every invention ever created depended on those few people surviving. Think about how impossible your existence really is. Every one of your ancestors survived long enough to have children, through drought, through predators, through famine, through one of the closest calls in human history. If even one generation had failed, you would never have existed. Humanity came astonishingly close to disappearing forever, and the only reason we are here today is because a tiny group refused to die.